Giving honor to God our Father, Christ our Redeemer, humankind our family, I will lift mine eyes unto the hills, from whence comes my help. My help comes from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. Hello, and welcome again to Tyree-Talk. Who said church is easy? Church is hard. Church is hard for the person walking through the doors afraid of judgment. Church is hard for the pastor's family under the microscope of an entire body. Church is hard for the prodigal son returning home broken and battered by the world. Church is hard for the girl who looks like she has it all together but doesn't. Church is hard for the couple who fought the entire ride to service. Church is hard for the single mom surrounded by couples holding hands and seemingly perfect families. Church is hard for the widow and widower with no invitation to lunch after service. Church is hard for the deacon, steward, or trustee with an estranged child. Church is hard for the person singing worship songs overwhelmed by the weight of the lyrics. Church is hard for the man or woman insecure in his or her role as a leader. Church is hard for the wife who longs to be led by a righteous man. Church is hard for the nursery volunteer who desperately longs for a baby to love. Church is hard for the single woman and single man praying God brings them a mate. Church is hard for the teenage girl or teenage boy wearing a scarlet letter, ashamed of his or her mistakes, and church is hard for the sinners. Church is hard for me and you. It's hard because on the outside it looks like shiny and perfect, Sunday best in behavior and dress. However, underneath those layers, we find a body of imperfect people, carnal souls, and selfish motives. But here is the beauty of church. Church isn't a building. Church isn't a mentality, nor is it an expectation. Church is a body. Church is a group of sinners saved by grace, living in fellowship as saints. Church is a body of believers bound as brothers and sisters by an eternal love. Church is a holy ground where sinners stand as equals before the throne of grace. Church is a refuge for broken hearts and a training ground for mighty warriors. Church is a convergence of confrontation and invitation, where sin is confronted and hearts are invited to seek restoration. Church is a lesson in faith and trust. Church is a barrier of burdens and a giver of hope. Church is a family coming together, setting aside differences, forgetting past mistakes, rejoicing in the smallest of victory. Church, the body and the circle of sinners turned saints, is where God resides within each of us. And if we ask, he is faithful to come. So even on the hard days at church, the days when we are at odds with a friend, when we fought with our spouse because we're late again, when we've walked in bearing burdens heavier than our hearts can handle, yet masking the pain with a smile on our face, when we've worn a scarlet letter under the microscope, when we've longed for a baby to hold or fought tears as the hymn lyrics was sung, when we've walked back in afraid and broken and walking away, let us remember that God has never failed to meet us there.